Hi, I'm Warrick from Harder and Steenbeck, and I'd like to talk to a very, very special group of people who are part of our Harder and Steenbeck community. And these are the people who've bought, in years gone by, either our classic Evolution airbrush, our previous model, or the classic Evolution Silverline, or the classic Evolution CRplus. Now, these are the airbrushes that our company's been making for the longest time, and anyone who bought one of those, you've really helped us build this company. So we'd just like to start this out by saying thank you. Recently, as some of you may know, we released the brand new Evolution 2024 CRplus, which is a complete redesign of the Evolution airbrush. And it represents the best technology that we've got access to today, and all of our design thinking absolutely up to date on how we think we can make you the best airbrush possible. Now, of course, a lot of you have been asking what spare parts from this airbrush might be worth buying for my old airbrush to somewhat increase the performance of it. So the spare parts for the Evolution 2024 are now available. And so what we'd like to try to do is make a video to speak to those of you who have the older model Evolutions and let you know which parts we think might be worth your money to buy to upgrade the performance of your older airbrush if you're not ready to invest in the new Evolution 2024. Now, we've got kind of a traffic light system here. Some of the parts just don't fit, okay? Every time there's a redesign, some things do become obsoleted, and some systems we have to completely redesign. We do try to avoid doing that because we know that you guys love having everything being backwardly compatible. But sometimes when we see a big enough performance increase available, we do take that choice. So the red light items will be where we say, don't buy this as a spare part for your old airbrush because it just won't fit. We've then got the amber items where we'll say, yes, it will fit, but we don't really think that fitting this new part from the 2024 model to one of the old models will really give you any improvement in performance. So please don't spend your money on it. And then the green light items where we know that one of the 2024 parts can be fitted to one of the older Evolutions and it will give you a performance increase that's worth having. Now, before we go into the body of the video, I do want to say to you that there are so many things on the 2024 models that have seen an absolutely comprehensive redesign. Most important of which, arguably, is that the internals of the body, which is this part of the airbrush here, have been completely redesigned. The airways are redesigned. The position of the needle packing is completely different. There's a lot of stuff in there. Manufacturing processes are changed so that the airbrush is cleaner inside and cleans up faster. There's a lot of things that are different in there. So whilst we're trying to give you the options of looking at what upgrades you might be able to apply to your old airbrush, I don't want to send you the message that putting upgrades on the old model is going to bring you the full performance of the new model, because it just won't. We're putting this information out there because we know that some of you maybe don't have the budget to invest in a whole new airbrush, but perhaps some of the features on the new models are attractive, and so we want to give you a way to access that if you don't want to buy the full new airbrush. So I hope that's clear. Now let's dive into it. So I'd like to start out by just quickly talking you through the main areas where there are significant differences between the 2024 model of the Evolution and the older ones. The first one that you'll notice is the top of the trigger. If I compare them like this, you'll notice that the top of the trigger is substantially different. The size of the trigger button is much, much larger on the 2024 models than on the previous ones. The reason for this is we did a bunch of testing with people with all sorts of different sized fingers and hands, and we came to the conclusion that a larger button was comfortable for many, many more people, and it accommodated people wanting to get on the trigger from the side, more on the front, more on the back, more like this, more like with a flat finger. It just accommodated all of those people with greater comfort, far better than the smaller trigger button. So that was one significant change on the trigger itself. The trigger system is completely revised. So the trigger, the X center, all of the interactions of the surfaces within the body, from the ball at the bottom to where the foot of the X center sits, the needle guide, the middle piece, and then finally the needle chuck are all completely redesigned in the 2024 airbrush. The one thing I just do want to make really clear though, is that when we talk about the trigger, and we say that we improved the trigger, really what we mean is we improved the trigger system. The trigger system is composed of the trigger itself, the body, which the trigger interacts with, of course, because that's where it pivots, the middle piece, the needle guide, the spring, and the X-center. All of those parts have been redesigned as a system, and this is what has solved the trigger action on the Harder and Steenbeck to the point where now the Evolution 2024 has a perfectly instant responsive trigger from the very, very front all the way to the back. So, for example, if you buy the trigger alone and fit it to your older model Evolution, there are some improvements it will yield, but it will not give you the 2024 trigger response and trigger actions. The other point that I want to make before we move on is that all of our airbrushes now are only available in full triple plate chrome CRplus specification. Now you'll see if I hold this airbrush alongside the older model Evolution, you'll see that there's quite a marked difference in hue of the silver parts of the airbrush. This is because these airbrushes were plated in nickel. These ones are now plated in chrome. So if you buy parts from this airbrush, just be aware that they may not fully match the tone of the silver plating on the old airbrush. So let's dive into it now. And we're going to start with the trigger. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end piece off the old model Evolution. By the way, everything that I say about the Evolution is equally applicable to the Silverline. So whether you're an Evo owner or a Silverline owner, they're pretty interchangeable with all the remarks that I'm going to make. We're going to pull out the needle, so that's out the way. And I'm going to pull the needle chuck back and pop out that trigger. Okay, so now let's do the same thing with the new model, Evolution 2024. So we're going to pull the trigger out of that, and I'm going to show you what happens when we fit that trigger into this airbrush. Now the first thing is they are easier to assemble because these triggers, the X-center doesn't spin around the trigger shaft like they used to. They're fixed, they can't pivot. So they're much, much easier to drop in. When we drop these in, they absolutely drop in, they're completely compatible, and they feel pretty nice in there. I'm going to give this one an amber rating. And the reason why it's not a green is, of course, because it's not the full trigger system. The advantage that it does give you, which I do think is something that arguably to some is worth having, is this larger trigger pad here has been universally acknowledged as being far more comfortable to work with. So I think that this is an advantage that might be worth having for some of you. It makes the airbrush much more comfortable to use for long periods of time. If comfort is the primary area where you'd like to improve the feel of either your old Evolution or your old Silverline Evolution, then I think just replacing the trigger with the one from the new 2024 Evolution is probably worth considering. But remember, it's not going to give you the trigger response of the Evolution 2024, because to do that, you really need the whole back end. So now let's look at that next phase. What if we replace the whole back end of the old model Evolutions? What do we get then? Now, it is possible to do it. So I'm just going to unscrew the middle piece from this old model Evolution. Take it out, put it to one side. I'm going to put that down on the bench. And then I'm going to unscrew the middle section from the new model Evolution. And what you'll notice is that these threads are the same. So you can just pop that in there, screw that right onto the old model, and everything works. I'm now going to pop the needle in there as well. And we'll see that everything works just fine. Now, what does this give you? Does it give you all the advantages of the Evolution 2024? No, not quite. And the reason for that is twofold. One, the parts that receive the bottom of the trigger, the pivot of the trigger, and the parts that receive the pivot of the X-center are still in the body here. And they've all been changed for 2024. So this will not give you the maximum amount of benefit that you get with the 2024 trigger system, but I think it probably takes you about 50% of the way there. If you just replace the trigger, I'm going to say that probably takes you about 20% of the way there, and if you replace the trigger and the back end, it's probably going to take you about 50% of the way there. You do need to take it with the new model end piece as well. The old model end piece will not fit onto the new model middle piece. So you will have a slight mismatch in the color of your end piece with the color of the airbrush itself. That is an old model Evo uprated with the new model trigger and back end. It does make for a better airbrush, but you are buying a lot of parts. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to give this an amber as well, because the cost of all of this together is fairly significant, and it's starting to get to the point where you might want to question if it wouldn't be better just to buy the Evolution 2024. Moving a little bit further forward on the airbrush, we come to the cup. Now, there is a small change to the cup, particularly on the 2 ml, but it's very, very slight, and so I don't really think it's worth buying a 2024 2 ml cup. The change essentially was so that when you put your finger in to wipe around the bottom of the cup, the shape in the bottom more closely matches the shape of a human finger. So when you put a paper towel in there or something to wipe it out, it just wipes out easier. It also increased the volume in the bottom of the cup by about 25%, which I think is also useful. But is it worth spending money on? I don't think so. So I'm going to say, although it is compatible, I'm going to put a red light on changing the cup system to the 2024 spec. Now, as we move up to the head, this is a little bit of a different matter. The reason is with the best will in the world and the best working practices, all of us are going to damage a head at some point. Now, when this happens to you, I think that there's absolutely no conceivable reason why you wouldn't upgrade to the 2024 Evolution specifications for the head, because quite simply put, it's just better in every way that matters. And so when we look at how that works, very simple, just like with any other Hot and Steenbeck, you just screw that front end off. So here's the front end from the 2024 Evolution. You'll notice it comes with an open front end, which is super cool because you get to clean your needle tip really, really easily, and I think that's a significant advantage as well. And you just interchange the whole head. Screw it onto a good finger tight. As I mentioned earlier, you'll notice there's a slight mismatch in color because all the new parts are triple chrome plated, whereas the old model Evolutions were nickel plated. So there's a slightly different color of plate there, but I don't think that's really something that is a problem. Let's reseat the needle. Put the back end back on. And here what we have now is the sort of furthest extent to which you can modify up your old Evolutions. So we've got the 2024 head on the front there, which gives you basically much better detail spray, better control with heavier paints because we've taken the nozzle size up slightly, but the detail capability is much, much better than the old Point 2. You've now got the 2024 trigger in there. It doesn't give you all the benefits. It doesn't have the extra trigger throw on the back like the 2024 Evo does. So it doesn't aid you in speed cleaning like the 2024 model does. And the bottom of the trigger isn't as stably held and pivoted as the 2024 body enables it to be. The same goes for the base of the X center. So you don't get all the benefits of that, but you do get some. We've got the 2024 middle piece with the whole needle guide system fitted inside of that, and the 2024 back end on there. Now, one of the parts that is absolutely compatible between all the airbrushes, and it's a part that I really like what we've done with this, is on the 2024s, we've redesigned the needle clamp nut. Now, this is really important because nobody in the airbrush business has looked at this part because it feels like it's inconsequential. It's just a thing that tightens up and clamps your needle in place. But what it also does is it's the part through which you need to pass the needle every time you want to replace it, especially if you like to replace the needles from the back. Now, what's remarkable about this new design for me is I'm now able to put needles back into airbrushes without my reading glasses, which is nothing short of a miracle, quite truthfully. And the reason is because the part is much, much longer. It's got some very carefully matched tapers on the inside of it, so that whatever angle you start introducing the needle at, you can't touch the tip on the opposing wall. So you can go on all sorts of different angles as you're going in, and it will just self-guide and center without touching the tip on any parts inside the airbrush. Now, I think that's worth having on any of the old models. So I'm just going to show you how we can use that on the old one. So if we look first of all at the Evolution, very, very simple. You just unscrew the old model needle chuck. This one just slips on, tightens up, and bingo, there you go. And the end piece fits on absolutely no problems whatsoever. Absolutely worth having. Now, you can also do this on your old model Evolution Silverline, but there's a little bit more to it than just replacing the part. Let me explain why. On the Silverline, you have a needle stop adjusting screw. Okay, now that is made for the shorter length of the old model needle clamp nut. So if I compare these side by side on the overhead camera, you can clearly see that this part is much longer than that one. This difference in length needs to be removed from the front end of the needle stop screw. So you basically just grind that off here. There's no problem with doing that. The brass that's underneath the plating won't corrode or cause you any kind of problems like that. It is a bit more hassle. If you're not up for grinding bits off your airbrush, then I wouldn't recommend this change. But if you are up for that, then it's really just a question of taking off the old needle chuck, replacing it with the new one. You've then got two possible routes to go. If you don't ever use this needle adjusting screw on your Silverline, you can just replace the end piece without even bothering to put it back on, and then you've got the full travel and functionality on the trigger. If you do want to make the mod so that you can use this, you'll just need to grind some length off of it. So for me, if I had to advise you what I think the optimal balance between value for money and performance increase is, if you're trying to hop up your old model Evolution or Evolution Silverline or Evolution CRplus, here is what I would recommend to you. I wouldn't recommend that you put this whole back end on there. I think that doesn't give you all the benefit of the 2024 trigger system because you're putting it into the old model body, and that's a big part of where we made the improvements. So I'm not going to recommend that you buy that whole back end. What I will recommend you do, though, is I think that the 2024 trigger is so much more comfortable for long painting periods. The interaction of the X center with the trigger is better. And so it does give you about 20% of the surer needle action that you've got on the 2024 system into your old airbrush. I am going to advise you to take off the old style needle chuck because I do believe that the new style needle chuck is so much easier to replace the needle into without catching the tip. It's designed to self-guide. So I think that's a really significant improvement. So I really recommend that. And I also believe that this head system here is superior in every way to the old model head systems. So the way that we're going to offer these are, we will offer you the full comprehensive set. My recommendation is that you take the set which gives you the new trigger and X center with the new needle chuck. That's a set. I think that's a really nice, good value for money hop-up set for the old model Evolutions. And then separately, of course, we'll offer the new headsets in 0.28 and 0.45. And they do represent a good value for money performance increase on your old model Evolution. And of course, as a final note, one of the things that you ask us a lot of questions about is back flushing, or as I like to call it, bubble backing. Now, with this 2024 specification head, that is super easy to do when compared to the older model Evolution head. All you do is you just pinch it and do your back flush or your bubble back. So that, I think, this head does give you a significant advantage on your old model Evolution if you fit this new head to it as well. So I hope that's been helpful. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything that I've been unclear about. It's a fairly complex topic. We will list all of these things on the page in the link in the description below, so you can click through to that and see all of this displayed in perhaps a more organized way than I've explained it to you in this video. But hopefully this helps you to understand that if you can't afford to go to a full new airbrush right now, there's still ways that you can access some of the new performance available from the 2024 developments on the Evolution airbrush.